Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. Hope everybody is doing well. Do check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com when you guys get a chance. Learn more about us and what we do when we're not making videos. Maybe read a few testimonials and learn what can be done with energy work. Again, lots of labels we can use, but really it is simply that. It's working with energy on energy.
It's very transformative.
It's the future. I mean, it is absolutely the future, more than some things that may be a lot more familiar to some people. But also, we want to invite everybody to join us on Patreon with exclusives coming up each week. Once we get past tax day, we'll be a lot busier because right now it's just torture. But that is the system. So, this question comes up. J.D. Vance's and also Vivek Ramaswamy's company, Amplify Bio, what's going on with that? It has received a lot of DoD contracts, etc. It appears the website's not up and running. It appears that it shut down. Look, in fact, readers added context. Company started showing signs of trouble in December, and they shut down. It is one of Central Ohio's, most promising biotech firms. That's what they say. In a posting on its website, the company said decision followed months of efforts to keep the 4-year-old firm afloat. It's with deep sadness and gratitude that we announce the closure of Amplify Bio's operations. The decision came after months of tireless efforts by Amplify Bio team leadership, investors, and other key stakeholders to explore and exhaust all investment acquisition possibilities. Founded in 2021 as a gene therapy spinoff from Battelle, Amplify Bio launched operations with $200 million facility in West Jefferson, Ohio. The following year, it acquired a facility in South San Francisco, and in late 2023 opened a 350,000 square foot operation in New Albany that was expected to create 263 jobs. The company could not be reached for additional details. Unclear how many employees remain at the company. It raised $200 million in venture capital investments. Investors included Battelle, J.D. Vance's venture capital fund, Narya Capital, Connecticut-based Viking Capital, and New York-based Kasdan Capital. But the company said the climate for biotech investment has changed since its founding. Like any startup, Amplify Bio's growth strategy relied on meeting revenue targets and supportive investor climate, the company posted. At the time Amplify Bio launched, market conditions were favorable for early phase drug development. That market sector has experienced a significant shift over the last couple of years, leading to a scarcity of investor financing for early stage biotech companies, which greatly impacted the ability to grow. As Amplify Bio noted, the decision has been building. The biotech trade publication Fierce Biotech reported in December that Amplify Bio laid off its San Francisco staff and at least some of its Ohio staff. Well, I think this says a lot about what's going on out there in the health field and in certain substances, certain procedures and processes. And I think there's a lot of skepticism out there that's growing in the average, sampling of the public. And then there's those like us and, the vast majority of you guys that really don't want to have anything to do with this at all and really don't believe in it at all. And, also there's so many people that are trying to believe in JD and Vivek and the rest of the crew that was taking in the fights last night. Again, Trump was there right next to Dana at the UFC fights, and Zuckerberg has been there often a lot too. But it looks like he's going to have to answer some questions in court coming up. a lot of people might be answering questions in court over the next year or two, because I think this ball that's rolling downhill is just going to keep picking up speed. And I think a lot of the technology firms, there's some technology that I think is just beginning to take off, and other technologies that may have a short lifespan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that it's being heard that change is desired. Strong change, big change is desired. What's happened is so many people have been affected in such a deep way, themselves, their families, people's lives being turned completely upside down. And all along we've been sitting here saying, just be very careful about what you put into your temple. Be careful. And hopefully some of that information has bled out there so that some people, maybe we help some people, which would be really wonderful. And we're going to continue to do that. So I do hope we continue to see positive change when it comes to how we actually heal ourselves instead of using band-aids. That's shown it's not working, and it's just not acceptable.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, we want real change. We want positive change. And yeah, I think, man, we could use technology for good without the nefarious intentions that we've seen and have been uncovered. And, we could have a paradise. This place is, I think, a paradise in its natural state outside of the Kali Yuga and the dark matrix. The natural matrix is a thing to behold. Here you have a sign of the times with economic power and how they've shifted intentionally the power totally away from the U.S., at least when it comes to manufacturing. And again, obviously, with the whole tariff situation, that is perhaps far too late, far too little to really make a significant difference in what the U.S. has lost manufacturing-wise. And yeah, maybe it's just the water. There's too much water under the bridge. It's going to literally take decades to reverse the tide. Look at this. A single Chinese state-owned shipbuilder produced more commercial vessels by tonnage in 2024 than the entire U.S. industry has since WW2. Wow. Well, again, and believe me, I don't like the Chinese system. I don't live in China. I've never been to China. So all I know is what I've seen on YouTube and throughout the internet and talking to people that lived in China. One of our good friends who's in North Carolina, his son lived in China, was teaching English in China. And, he seemed to have a positive opinion on it. He was also a techie, or he is also a techie. And, he's a young man that's out there and exploring a new culture. And I love exploring cultures. I really, really do. If I trusted the food, I would be dragging Cindy to every little ethnic restaurant I could find. We used to do that, especially when you get a little bit more exotic. I love doing that. We can have these nation states and still all get along. I think definitely the average people don't want war. They don't even want economic war. They just want to, be able to live their own life because they would like to follow their passions. And their passion might just be sleeping in a hammock, on a nice sunny afternoon without chemical-laden clouds.
That would truly be a luxury at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you see, this was completely planned, I think, from before the end of World War II, but certainly it accelerated in the 70s. It accelerated, with Nixon and then everything else that we've seen come through since then. And obviously, when we look to the Obama years and then into the Biden years, Everything has been kind of a disaster here on the home front in the USA. And at the same time, we could say the start of the plague upon the land happened when 47 was 45. It did. A lot of the big appointees were made by him. Now, did he have the opportunity to really pick who he wanted? Well, that could be something totally, totally different, up for discussion. If we actually, had an open confirmation of what the real power structure is on the planet, because it's not what you see. China already produces 54% of the world's steel. I worked in the steel market, and sometimes I think, God, I must be 100 years old because I've done so many different things. Do you know I had a Class A CDL? Yeah, I've done that too. I had a bartending license. Never bartended in my life, but I had a bartending license. You name it. It feels like I've done it because, for one thing, I have a hard time sitting still unless I'm forced to sit still, and I always like to explore. And maybe that's the nature of an older soul that's had a lot of lives and doesn't want to waste any time. But when you look at what's gone on, we are not set up to win a long fight with China. And that's just part of the power structure. Now, we in the U.S. would never accept some things that have happened in other countries. And that's also another reason why the war has already been situated to have a certain outcome. Think about this again, whether we're making tanks, which, again, tanks aren't such a big deal in the battlefield anymore because drones are taking them out like nothing. And pretty soon you're going to actually have robotic soldiers that look like human-shaped, and we already have the robo-dogs too. Pretty soon you might not actually find a lot of flesh and blood soldiers on the battlefield, but they'll still wage battle, and there still will be civilian casualties. And when you look at it, China is set up to mass produce all this, and they've just had a breakthrough in the steel producing, iron making, steel producing, business where they can boost productivity to a level that nobody else can match. At least, again, this is what is just put out there. Consider this and look at these numbers. Electricity, China more than doubles the U.S. output and does it way cheaper. Automobiles, 3 times the U.S. output. Again, in the World War II, in that scenario, your big 3 automakers switched to making military equipment. And this is just what happens in a world war. And we cannot keep up with it. We just can't. Look at China, about 1 billion tons a year of steel. The U.S., 86 million. Not even 1/10. So again, long-term warfare with China, and then you put in the people equation, it's not going to work out. It's just not going to be a winning scenario for the U.S. and NATO. And, again, India is another key there, because if India is aligned with the BRICS nation, it is the I am BRICS after all, then there's just far too many human resources to ever win a long-term war. And this is why you had both Netanyahu and Trump, basically saying, we have super weapons that nobody has, and you should be aware of that. That's because you look at all the other numbers here. Look at this again. Electronics, 9-1. Shipbuilding. It's again, everything. We could not win a long-term war. And that's why they're bringing that up.
I was just looking at housing costs, and it's interesting, the wording, China rent $300 to $500 a month, tier 2 cities. Well, I wonder what that means. And then USA, $1,500 to $2,000 a month. I don't know. What does tier 2 cities mean, you think?
They rate their cities, according to, I guess, the population, but also technology too.
So those are nice cities.
Yeah, if you haven't looked, I mean, China's just they've put so much money. Again, we put so much money into policing the world, and they've put it into infrastructure. The average rent in China $300 to $500 a month. In the U.S., 1,500 to 2,000. I think it's even higher than that. In reality, China's healthcare, 500 a person a year. U.S., 12,000. You could do, HSAs, health savings accounts, but if you really want those things to work, I was having a conversation with ChatGPT. Well, can we use it to buy vitamins? Can we use it to buy herbs? Because we, Cindy and I, do not believe in allopathic medicine. We believe in nature. And I would, again, utilize a naturopath or somebody that practices traditional Chinese medicine, because it's all about balance in the body. We just don't believe Rockefeller medicine, which is what we have in the West. It literally is Rockefeller medicine, and many of you guys know that. So again, you just run it straight down, and they've already handed the ball off to China, which has a completely authoritarian system. This is why, this is all, basically been laid out for a long period of time. And yes, we will not go along, the average U.S. citizen's not going to go along with what the average Chinese citizen has gone along with, unless we lose the war and we're underneath a military dictatorship.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
And occupation. But see, that sounds horrible, and that sounds very, very defeatist and everything. But the reality is, too, I think people are waking up, and, I think people are not going to go along with what the system wants for very much longer. So I think all these nations are going to fall, whether we're talking the BRICS or the NATO nations. It's only a matter of time before enough people have had enough, and enough of an awakening has taken place to till we shed the toxic parasitic leadership that this world has had. So as you could see, 4 times the share of U.S. manufacturing by 2030. Again, it's been planned this way for decades, even generations. And you have an emergency bill to say British Steel's Scunthorpe blast furnaces has become law. The bill gives the government the power to take control of British Steel. So what do you have there? Well, it seems like it's turning into the same thing we see in China. It's all government controlled. Whether you label it socialist, whether you label it democratic republic, this is what we're heading towards pretty much everywhere. Unless, truly, the higher selves grab a hold of some of these politicians and, shake some sense into them.
I certainly hope it gets better.
Now, when it comes to that first item that we were talking about, what Cindy sees is the guides show her that the company is turning over. Now, belly up, yes,
maybe that's what it was.
Belly up, or restructuring. Because again, you can take the same investors, you can take the same programs, the same paradigms, you could even hire the same personnel, slap a new label on a new corporate entity, and just head right back to doing what you want to do, if again you have the funding. So this is where we have to be really, really vocal on, again, what our money is being spent on. When you look at our quote-unquote defense budget, it's over $1 trillion now. It's over $1 trillion. So that has done nothing but increase. And, we got to change this. We have to change this paradigm. New York bill proposes legalizing Bitcoin and crypto for state payments. A New York lawmaker has introduced legislation that would allow state agencies to accept cryptocurrency payments, signaling growing political momentum for digital asset integration into public services. Yeah, this is the future. This is what's coming for at least the immediate and relatively near future. They want to get rid of cash. In some places, though, people have pushed back. Here in the Deep South, they tried to do that in our own little town, and people were made such an uproar that what they were trying to do got reversed right away.
It did, and it does. People are very firm in their standing around here, and I think that's going to be an obvious split. We have to deal with this energy called money, and it comes in different forms. And I think integration to a degree is very necessary to function in certain ways. I think there's got to be a little bit of flexibility. If you want to have a semi-normal life, there's got to be some kind of integration. But how you integrate that and how you display that in your day-to-day life, that's up to you. I mean, things do not need to be horrible, mean, greedy, bad. It does not need to look that way. We can do things differently and still deal with this energy called money. It does not have to be ugly at all.
No, it doesn't. And DeFi, decentralized finances. People that are really big on crypto, they want to take the power away from the banks. That's a good thing. The banking system is what enslaves us. It really is. It's been hijacked. We understand that. Well, the whole thing really is an implementation that was put into effect truly by the very cold-blooded you-know-whos that literally took over the planet a long time ago. Yet, barter and trade, sure. I think we can always barter and trade. And I think that's eventually where we end up heading back to, or as we talked about on a Patreon exclusive video, a form of energy exchange that is very, very fair, is ultimately what we need and want to have. I do think, again, blockchain that is right out there and cannot be monopolized. The intent is good. It's just, again, will they hijack it? Well, because they hijack everything. I understand now that I've put at least 100 hours into studying this topic. I understand where people are coming from a lot more. And in an ideal world, it might be the next step. But at the same time, what do you have? You also have that 24/7, 365 monitoring, surveillance. When you are carrying around like a cold wallet and stuff all the time, or we're already to this point. We're so close to unfortunately the chipping of everybody, and then again, if you don't go along with things and you have a chip in you, I've seen sci-fi movies where they triggered that chip to blow up in sci-fi movies. That's just a movie, of course, has no bearing on real life. But again, everything here is just for entertainment purposes. I understand where people are coming from. I think you have to be very, very careful with this type of industry. And me personally, tread cautiously, understand it's coming. I don't think we can get away from, using some sort of electronic money. I think it's just going to be just like people didn't want, to have a credit card, and with good reason in some ways, because it leads to entrapment. And if you have to carry balances on a credit card from month to month, it's hard as hell to get out of there. Again, these interest rates, I've seen though, that there is, in some places, there's legislation, there are legislators that want to cap what the credit card companies can charge, because seriously, 20, 25, 30%, it's extortion. It's highway robbery. Again, we have more thrown on us now than, at the Tea Party. When the Tea Party happened, we had life good at that point compared to what the average person has, on them now.
I know. I mean, people are just doing their best day to day and being as honest as they can. And I think if you go into things and you're honest with your energy exchanges and you're seriously just being the best person you can be, but you're still, we all still have to make decisions and keep our heads above water and do things. There's a way to use money to get closer to a 5D way of life. What if you're spending it on healing modalities that are good for the earth, that are good for you, that are actually going to bring about true healing, then does that money you've invested in yourself to bring about true healing, is that now, it's not bad. It doesn't make it bad, but it's people's perception of the whole thing. So if we have a negative perception of the type of energy exchange that we are using, well, that could very well taint the incoming energy, and you could create blocks for yourself.
Yeah, so Illinois passed a crypto bill to fight fraud and rug pulls after a recent wave of insider schemes related to meme coins. Meme coins obviously could be very dangerous. And, again, I think you'll see a lot of legislation that will go out there to, quote unquote, protect people, but end up also causing other ways of government interference. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens.
I think there's going to be some back and forth. I don't think there's going to be any clean walk away for anything. I think it's a matter of how you manage your life, how you view things, your perception, what you spend it on, and how are you going to transform your life, to make it the next generation for our children and grandchildren a little bit different. We all have very important decisions and choices that are coming up that are going to affect our kids.
So here you have the home of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro set on fire this morning. Nobody was injured. It is being investigated as arson. I believe I also saw a quote somewhere where somebody said that somebody was arrested again for this craziness that's going on out there. A lot of people are very, very upset with the power structure. Let's just put it that way on both sides. And here you have pig-infused soybeans, by the company Mulek. Company inserted pork genes into soy to create hybrid proteins. I'll pass, guys. I don't want nothing genetically modified. We are genetically modified. We have been. The second chromosome fusion. We don't need any more.
Yeah, I mean, we're full to the brim. We don't want any more.
Check this out. This was after the big 7.7 in Myanmar. You have this showing up, these, there's so much buried history, Tartaria, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. We've had very, very advanced civilizations on this planet, and also civilizations in which ETs were coming and going. Other beings were openly coming out and showing themselves to everybody here. That live in some of those other segments of Earth that, we've talked about, that's kind of not the quarantine zone like where we find ourselves. But if we could raise our frequency higher, we can escape the quarantine zone. I do think individuals can escape the quarantine zone at any time when we do leave the body. Again, it all depends on where your frequency is, and that's really all about where is your heart.
Indeed.
So ancient structures. They say this is not that old per se, from the Kongbong dynasty, the ancient royal structure. I think this is very exciting to see these relics from the past. There's so many amazing things that will be uncovered, I think, in the earth changes that are underway and will be accelerating.
I think it's all very interesting, and I was just looking out in the yard the other day, and I was looking at the houses and just looking at the cars and looking at the things, and realizing that this is a continuous cycle, and we're probably just sitting on top of another civilization that's not too far off from what we're looking at now. It's just things were done a little bit differently. And when I was looking at this, what was being uncovered, what I was seeing was it's a place where people would come together, kind of almost like I think, is it a civic center I'm thinking of, where people come together in town and they come together for purposes like weddings or to make something different in the town. It's like a town's place where people come together, but maybe even they do rituals, but it's definitely a gathering place.
I was going to show those other pictures, but Cindy gets so much activity on Facebook, it'll be beep, beep,
Yeah,
beep, beep, beep. I'll give you guys the link as always. Here's Matt from Cultivate, Elevate, and citric acid.
Citric acid, that's a different type of mold. That's a mold which is grown on canola patties and sprayed with aluminum. This is why when people consume citric acid, they get very ill. Their tonsils start to swell, they might get hives, they get nauseous, because Monsanto grows that mold on a canola patty and then sprays it with aluminum, so that when a person goes to consume it, they get sick. That's why they put it in all the little processed foods, some of the soaps, laundries, skincare products, citric acid. And so when you get to the flip side of the other side of mold, they're not telling you what something is grown on and then, going into the body. But citric acid, very toxic, and like I said, grown on canola patties, sprayed with aluminum. So isn't it interesting they put that in cleaning products?
Yeah, again, as little processed food as possible. A new food pyramid. This is going to be for the very, very unwell, in the metabolic sense, nation. Yeah, the food pyramid that we grew up with was obviously so laden with bad advice, let's say. When you look to it, there are no essential carbohydrates. There are essential fatty acids that your body needs. There are essential amino acids. Many people are discovering that they can feel great and lose weight and maintain a good healthy body weight by using more of a ketogenic, paleo type of diet. And definitely the first thing to do is to eliminate the junk food and all the processed foods.
I think it's so important to go with foods that are made from the earth. I mean, our bodies come from the earth, all the layers of dirt, everything. We come from the earth. So what we put back in our bodies to help rebuild our bodies only makes sense that it should somehow be from the earth.
Absolutely. And get out there and have some fun and walk your four-legged friend like this little guy is. I mean, he could ride him, absolutely. And look at how gentle.
Oh gosh, I really wish Rama and Sita were like that.
Yeah, Rama's pretty gentle. Here you go. It's a balancing act. That is exactly what we are being called to do in these times, to keep working spiritually on ourselves and also try to maintain our health or bring our health into balance and harmony. You can do it, but again, it's a matter of prioritizing it.
No, you know what he's doing? He's helping his wife get the antenna signal just right so she could watch her favorite show. This is a good man here.
Absolutely. As always, guys, we thank you for your support. Look forward to your comments. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.